Thou art a villain.
Villain? Am I not?
We're back with part 2 of the Skylanders Trap Team 10th Anniversary tier list. This time, we're here with the villains. I said in my last Trap Team video that this title is somewhat contentious within the fandom, and I think that applies to the villains. Though I imagine that kinda depends on what part of the fandom you're coming from, because the villains are broken. In my opinion, they are a great addition to the game, and I'm kind of upset that they didn't come back, but at the same time, I can kinda see why they didn't. One, I imagine that programming for future games would be difficult, but like I mentioned, the villains in this game are crazy for one major reason. They can't die. Their major gimmick is that their health is time. When the villain is being used or when the villain gets hit, the time gauge goes down. And when they're not in use, the time gauge refills, and quite quickly, might I add. This is already pretty good, but another reason that villains are so good is because they're basically a get-out-of-jail-free card. Not only do you really not have to worry about getting hit as a villain, but the Switch has iframes on it. And this isn't even mentioning that some villains do hellacious damage. So yeah, they're crazy strong. There's basically no reason not to use them outside of challenging yourself or getting the 4th star in levels, which isn't too difficult anyway, especially with the pay-to-win Eon's Elite. Now, how I'm going to rank villains is based on a number of factors here. Psych, it's basically just damage. There's a lot of minor factors that will be considered, like time gauge, which doesn't actually really change much between villains, but it is noticeable enough to be worth noting, along with other superfluous factors like design, redesign, music, boss fight, quest, and availability. Now, that last factor might sound a little strange, but if you're familiar with Fire Emblem, and the fact that I even mentioned this will probably get me bullied in the comments, then you're likely familiar with the concept of availability. But if not, the general idea is that the earlier you have access to a character, generally the more use they have. This doesn't necessarily make them better, but they have utility that the later game characters don't have. Now, compared to Fire Emblem, villain availability is nowhere near as important in Trap Team, since it basically only applies to your first playthrough. The availability thing will literally never apply to Nightmare Mode unless you specifically reset your toys after you beat Hard Mode. It especially didn't apply to me, since I could just put each villain on a separate trap since I was playing on emulator, but this doesn't apply to most people. You'll most likely have one trap of each element, if even, so usually which villain you'd use has an opportunity cost, and I will be considering this. Something that sort of goes hand in hand with availability is the villain quest. They're required for 100% completion, and can be as simple as talking to an NPC, or a mind-numbingly annoying challenge. And depending on when it is in the game can affect how useful a villain is, since the villain quests dramatically increase the time gauge and damage of a villain. So obviously, the earlier the better. However, sometimes these quests are multiple chapters ahead, and sometimes you have to replay older levels in order to get the quest done, neither of which are great for some villains, and this will be affecting their ranking. I am doing this list in recruitment order just to kind of show that the jobbers that you get early on do have their uses, but before we begin, be sure to like and subscribe, become a member, and join the Discord. It really helps out the channel. I'm trying to get to 10,000 before the end of the year. But let's just start off with
Sheep Creep.
Sheep Creep is not only the first villain you get, he's also just the first enemy you fight in general, which is kind of surprising. Of course, going along with this, he's basically the easiest fight in the game. He's a normal enemy that they just kind of gave a little more health to. I will say that it's really disappointing that Hugo is only in the opening cutscene for this game and nowhere else, because I feel like a sheep villain would have gone really well with him, and they just never acknowledge it. For the first villain, you really aren't expecting that much. His damage is kind of on the low side, and his time gauge is just okay. The secondary attack is actually decent, it knocks back, but the damage just really isn't all there, especially considering how vulnerable it leaves you. Despite Chief Creep being the first villain you get, the quest isn't until Chapter 3, which is kind of late. I say kind of late because it is only 2 chapters later, but realistically you'd think that Chief Creep would be the one to introduce the mechanic. The quest itself is actually kind of interesting. It's literally just Angry Birds, but it's actually not that bad. I also just really like his redesign. Like, yeah, they just made his wool black, but sometimes the simplest changes are the best. So overall, for the first villain you get, he's not so bad. He's nothing special, but you could definitely do a lot worse.
The Gulper.
I can't put down the cup, can't put down the cup.
The good old Glizzy Gulper. For being the first Doom Raider, it's unsurprising that he's arguably the worst one. I'm a little upset that his boss fight isn't really a boss fight and it's more just an action set piece. Now this is how every other game has done their Chapter 1, but it is kind of disappointing to see, especially since this is the game that's known for boss fights, and the Gulper is the only one that doesn't have one. His damage is okay, but it's not really anything special. The primary and secondary attack are basically the same. Honestly, the Gulper's biggest issue is that he's way too melee focused. Big shocker, being melee is still bad even for the villains. You just don't have to worry about getting hit nearly as much. The good thing about the Gulper is that you get him at the end of Chapter 1, and then his villain quest is at the start of Chapter 2, which is pretty convenient, and it probably means you're going to be using him for quite a while. The quest itself, though, is kind of annoying, and that's mostly just due to his bad movement speed, but it is based around the Giant's Heroic Challenge area, which is actually kind of nice to see again. I also just think his redesign just isn't that good. I don't know why they made him green. I feel like just any other color would have been better. I do think it's really funny that his species is just anthropomorphic blob. Like, he's just a blob, that's it. I do like that his personality is basically just being fat, but personality can only get you so far, and I actually do think he's worse than Sheep Creep. Like, yeah, he does more damage, but being melee focused just isn't that good, and he's not even really that fun to play.
Tussle Sprout.
Now, Tussle Sprout, similar to Sheep Creep, is yet another enemy that they just kind of upscaled into having more health and calling it a boss. I'm not even going to mention this attribute for anyone else since it's literally the case for every villain except the Doom Raiders. Just note that the fight is really easy for basically all of these guys. Honestly, there really isn't anything too crazy to talk about with Tussle Sprout. The poison does okay damage, and the primary is good for area control. The secondary attack is also pretty strong, but it's kind of hard to hit. I do think it's also worth noting that he's got a sick skin. And I mean, like, literally, he looks sickly in his skin. It's kind of strange. Overall, still probably C tier, but definitely better than these two guys. Also, why is he Earth Element? This actually happens like a couple times where villains just don't really match their element. It's kind of strange.
Buzzer Beak.
That fucking bird that I hate.
Dude, Buzzerbeak? Genuinely, this might be one of my hot takes of the video, but I actually think Buzzerbeak is pretty good. He's one of the earlier villains you can obtain. You get him in Chapter 2, and his quest is in Chapter 4, which isn't too bad. Skin is also just okay, but dang, is his damage, like, kind of crazy. The spin has good area control and hits multiple times with a crazy upward hitbox, and the slam is also really strong. Not to mention it has a pretty solid hitbox on it. Like, 400 damage on one hit is kind of crazy, so I'm actually going to put him in A tier. Like, not even joking.
Slobber Trap.
Slobber Trap is really weird. I don't quite get how he works. Like, the secondary attack I think is just supposed to slow enemies down, but it's just not that intuitive and makes you really slow when you're using it. It doesn't even really help that the primary attack just isn't that good. So Slobber Trap, just in general, is just kind of hard to use. It does help that you could just get him and then immediately upgrade him in Chapter 2 since the quest is just free, it's just right there. Not to mention the boss fight is fairly easy, though I will say that the boss fight is actually unique in that Slobber Trap doesn't engage with you immediately. You have to take on a wave of enemies before him, which I know isn't really that original. I mean, we're not really breaking new ground here, but it's kind of different for this game. I would also like to add that I think that his evolved skin is one of the only ones I think is actually better than the original. It's not exactly unique or anything, but it's pretty good. The biggest problem that Slobber Trap has is that he's the second evolved water villain, and he's just not as good as the Gulper, which is kind of insane to say because I don't think the Gulper is that good. So I think for that reason, he has to go to D tier. Maybe next time he should spend less time slobbering over traps and instead slobber on my knobber. Like corn on the cobber.
Bruiser Cruiser.
So Bruiser Cruiser is also kind of strange. He doesn't function the way the normal Bruiser Cruiser enemy does, which kind of just makes him less fun. The primary attack doesn't go into the rapid punch mode nearly as well as you'd think it does. Not to mention, you have to hold the button instead of mash it, which I actually feel could have been a really cool like skill check to see how fast you could mash to get more punches out. But no, you just have to hold the button, which is very strange. But the secondary attack though is actually pretty strong, not to mention you can swap cancel it, which I'd recommend doing since you're stuck there for a long time, and like the fountain of projectiles that comes out like immediately after you do the big burst basically is never worth it. He really is the epitome of a last resort since you're basically only going to switch to him when you have to, and then he's just going to do one move and then get out immediately. I think that probably puts him in C tier, probably right there.
Broccoli Guy.
Broccoli Guy is the villain with the stereotypical zoomer haircut with the stereotypical millennial writing. And you'd think that it'd make me hate him, but no, I absolutely love him. He's basically Medic from TF2 where you can heal your allies and also hit really hard. Sure, the primary attack is a little hard to hit, but when it does, it's pretty strong. It can hit multiple times for 100 damage, which is really good. Still though, obviously you're mainly using him for the healing, and the healing is actually pretty solid. It covers a decent area and heals you for quite a bit of health too. Not to mention, it's actually pretty quick to summon. I think it is worth noting that his fight is hilariously easy since once you kill the minions, he literally can't attack, he doesn't do anything. I also really like his skin since he literally just goes from broccoli to cauliflower, which I actually think is really neat. He's also surprisingly tanky, he's got a pretty solid time gauge. He's also a funnier villain than what we've had before. Broccoli Guy's the key to all of this. I just don't really understand why his sound design is ice cream truck inspired, but you know, he's actually pretty good. I'm probably gonna put him right there.
Chompy Mage.
Good old Chompy Mage. You know, as annoying as I find this guy, he's definitely not the worst Doom Raider.
Look, I'm gonna be honest. I don't really like Chompy Mage. I think he's a little overrated.
His primary attack is slow but strong and can be used as a jump attack. But holy shit is the Chompy summon awful. It takes him like 10 years to summon 2 Chompies that die in one hit and don't do any damage. It's actually crazy because he's worse at summoning Chompies than the normal Chompy is. How did this even happen? The big Chompy mode is also okay. All the attack buttons just become the shockwave, including the jump, which really sucks. The problem is you're just too slow in Chompy mode. It also doesn't help that his time gauge is on the lower end, so you're going to be taking quite a few hits with him, especially if you're using Chompy mode a lot. I will say that the boss fight is actually pretty difficult for how early it is. He has really low health, but god dang do you have to be doing a lot of jumping. 3 shockwaves per jump is going to be quite the bullet hell you're going to be going through. His quest is also just like 1.5 chapters later, which means he isn't weak for too long. But the big problem is him and Broccoli Guy both have a quest in Chapter 5, so if you only have one life trap, you kind of have to pick and choose which one you want to get. And I genuinely recommend Broccoli Guy over Chompy Mage. Both quests are free, although I will say that the Chompy Mage one is certainly more entertaining. But I don't know why his redesign is blue. I think it's supposed to be based on the Cruncher from Skylanders Spyro's Adventure. Maybe it's supposed to be the Frigid Chompy. It's one of those two. They're both blue. But I kind of wish they went with Enfuego Chompy, especially since the boss fight in Skylanders Giants had so much to do with the Enfuego Chompies. Not to mention his Super Chompy mode is fire-based. So why would they not make him red? I don't know, maybe him and the Gulper decided they'd switch primary colors when they evolved for some reason. I will say, he's probably B tier, but he's probably going to end up towards the bottom of B tier. Shrednaught should be way more fun than he is, but the problem is walking into enemies doesn't do nearly as much damage as the enemy version does, so it's just not nearly as fun. Not to mention the primary attack is weak and forces you to stand still. You can't use it while moving, which really sucks. You also can't use it while you're using the secondary attack. And the secondary attack is pretty good, but why am I using the gun attack on the big chainsaw tank? This just isn't right. I will say the one thing I really like about Shrednaught is that the quest is really good, and it's built great into the level. Yeah, it really sucks that Mystic Mill is 5 chapters after you get him in Phoenix Sanctuary, but I do kind of wish that more villain quests were like this. I imagine that it'd be pretty difficult to integrate more involved villain quests into the levels, but it's nice to see when they actually do it. Still, I think he's gonna be... I'm gonna say bottom of C. I think the villain quest really does make up for a lot of the shortcomings, which is crazy because his damage isn't even really that bad, but the villain quest is just cool and I like it. So here he is, bottom of C tier.
It's the Cold Front with DJ Chill Bill.
Chill Bill in the mix.
I don't think Chill Bill is that good. Alright, now hear me out. Easy S tier if we're thinking about memes. But if we're being real for a sec, Chill Bill kinda sucks. His primary attack is the only way that he can do damage, and if he can't freeze an enemy, it just doesn't do anything to them. His freeze attack basically has the same limitations as launching enemies does, so if you can't launch an enemy, you can't freeze them to insta-kill them. And while the freeze is like a really cool insta-kill, get it? It just takes way too long. The secondary attack is also just not good. It just leaves you way too open, and I don't even think it does damage. I think it just slows enemies down. His quest is also free, but it sucks that you have to go back to Chompy Mountain in order to do it. The redesign also just isn't anything special. He just becomes more blue. I guess that's because if they made him green, he would die. I will say, though, that his song is actually pretty good, and it's really fun to hear him on the radio throughout the game. Which, if you think about it, doesn't really make sense, unless these are, like, recorded broadcasts from like long ago, which also doesn't make sense since he's talking about current events. So like, when did Chill Bill have the time to like do this? Still, I don't have it in my heart to put him in D tier, but he's still not very good.
Cuckoo Clocker.
Another bird that I hate.
Man, they really front-loaded all these life villains for some reason. This is like the 4th one in 4 chapters? That's crazy. Still, he's actually pretty good. He's terrible at dealing with small fry and armor, but bosses and bigger enemies are way more open and he deals a lot of damage. The stun attack kind of mitigates the small fry issue, but it's still not amazing. It's mostly used for medium-sized enemies. Since large enemies can't be stunned, it's useless against them, and for the really small enemies like Chompies, the AoE on the primary is like nothing. It also really sucks that you have to replay Phoenix Sanctuary in order to get his villain quest done with, though it's worth it because his redesign is pretty cool. He kind of looks like a Nitro Skylander, which I actually think is really neat. One final thing I'd like to add is that his song is just kind of weird. It's not that it's bad or anything, it doesn't really fit a bird. It's kind of more like jungle beat-esque, you know? Do I want to put him in B tier or A tier? He's definitely better than Chompy Mage. I'm gonna say probably A tier. He's definitely a niche pick, but I think he's actually pretty good. I think for general play, I think Broccoli Guy is still better, but I think if you're like trying to do some of the arena challenges, I think Cuckoo Clocker's a little better. Bombshell. Man, I remember that quest being awful, but it's actually not nearly as bad as I initially thought. It's still not good or anything, but it's not nearly as bad as I remember it being. Bombshell is the privilege of being one of only 3 magic villains, and he's easily the worst out of all of them. The primary attack is strong, but I wish it was the actual bomb that the enemies have. It has no lingering effect, which is stupid. Also, if you get hit, it gets interrupted, which is really bad. The secondary attack is also so bad. It's not a movement option since it's the same as your walking speed, and its damage is barely enough to kill a Chompy in this game. I don't know why you would ever use this. Also, the song and the redesign kinda suck. I'm like half tempted to put him into D tier. In fact, I think I will. Alright, I think about it for a sec. He's actually really not that bad. He's definitely in this range. I'm gonna say probably better than the Gulper. The bomb attack is good. It's literally all he has, but it is good, at least. Chef Pepperjack. Similar to Chompy Mage, he has really annoying voice lines, but once you get past that, he's actually pretty solid. The primary attack is a good AoE projectile that does good damage, the secondary attack is a good movement option and heavy damage dealer, and the tertiary is similar to the secondary attack, but you don't have the movement speed. Also, really surprising that Chef Pepperjack is the first fire villain you run into. He's the Doom Raider and he's the first one. It's very strange. His quest is also pretty fun, and I really like his redesign. The black and red accentuate pretty nicely. And the boss fight is really fun. It is insanely hectic on Nightmare mode. He'll basically cover the whole screen in peppers, and you'll be forced to switch to a villain unless you want to take some damage. I don't think he's too good. In fact, I think he's probably like solid mid-tier. He's definitely better than Chompy Mage, since his damage is a little lacking, but he's still pretty good. Dang, you know, I was bullying Chill Bill for having a really long startup on his kill, but Brawlrus just takes the cake. Not only is his damage really low, and so is his time gauge, both attacks just take way too long to start up for how little damage they do. Honestly, there just really isn't that much to talk about with Brawlrus. His damage is just really low, and that really sucks for him. The question is he D tier? I think he might be. He's definitely on, like, decent end, but I mean, every other tech villain is just better than him. I will say that it is really funny that his villain skin basically just team scrambles him. Like, his bandana just goes from red to blue.
Team Scramble.
Mastermind also kinda balls. Don't know what's going on in Rainfish Riviera, but these villains kinda suck. His whole gimmick is that he's able to mind control enemies so that they attack other enemies. A couple Skylanders have already had this gimmick, and it wasn't really impressive on them, and it certainly isn't impressive on Mastermind. I've already kind of gone over why this is bad in the Trap Team tier list, but to recap, it doesn't really last that long, enemies really aren't that good compared to you, and you can't even damage enemies while they're mind controlled. All these factors contribute to mind control being really bad. While his primary attack sucks, at least his secondary attack is good. 100 damage as an AoE is pretty nice, even if it is pretty short range, though I have no idea what they were cooking with the skin. It looks cool, don't get me wrong, but lime green just doesn't really fit him. I don't know, I'm a little conflicted. I think the two problems with Mastermind is that his gimmick just isn't worth it, and every other undead villain is just better than him. So for that reason, I think I have to put him into D tier.
Brawl and Chain.
Monster Marsh ends off with like an actually pretty solid villain though. Brawl and Chain is pretty good. Both his primary and his secondary attack are pretty strong, and his get over here is just way better than Voodoo's for some reason, since it pierces enemies. I can't believe they power crept Voodoo'd with a villain. There's a couple things holding Brawl and Chain back. For one, he's melee, which really does suck, but that god-awful quest is just not fun at all. Nobody likes it, just because Brawl and Chain is way too slow. Oh, and his song gets me copyright claimed. I'm half tempted to put him into D tier just for that, but I probably can't do that. I'm definitely going to be putting him in B tier, though.
Chomp Chest.
I'm kind of surprised it took Skylanders this long to create like a mimic enemy, but now that we have one, I think he's actually kind of cool. Chomp Chest is surprisingly one of the strongest villains. Like, his primary attack does some pretty good damage, not to mention it's also a good movement option. His secondary attack, though, is not even an attack. Finding the treasure in the levels gives 1k gold guaranteed, but finding it in the levels themselves is actually, like, really annoying, since it could be basically anywhere. Now, to be fair, I imagine there's specific spots for it to spawn, but, I don't know, looking that up is kind of annoying, and kind of defeats the whole purpose of him being there anyway. Not to mention, Trap Team just gives you a bunch of gold anyway. Like, you do not need Chomp Chest. However, if you really want to grind some gold, he is way better as the boss fight, specifically because of the Kaos exploit. We're not going to be going over that until we actually get to Kaos, but just know he is way better as the boss fight for grinding out gold. I also really like his voice lines, he's just really funny. Though, speaking of voice lines, his quest is really annoying. Like, I don't mean in terms of playing it, I mean in terms of the voice lines. That stupid dragon just keeps saying hot dog over and over and over again. Like, did he really have to say it every time you got a hot dog? You have to collect 75 of those things. Anyways, we know for a fact that Chomp Chest is the Glizzy Gladiator. I will say that at least at the end of the quest, you get a pretty cool skin for Chomp Chest. I actually really like his redesign. Genuinely, I think he's probably A tier.
Ice Cream.
Ice Cream. Okay. Finally, we have a completely irredeemable villain. I don't care what Eon says, there is no redeeming this villain. Ice Cream probably has the lowest damage out of any villain in the game, which is kind of saying something because you got Sheep Creep way earlier. The primary attack is bad, it does no damage. The secondary attack is bad, it does no damage, and is super committal. She's super slow, her time gauge is low, and she's got an annoying quest. She really just has everything. Not to mention her reskin is just not that good either. Easily the worst villain. It's probably not even close. Man, they really put both of the eye-based villains in the same chapter. How lazy could they get? Unfortunate for I-5, he's gonna have to go down low instead of up top, if you know what I mean. Alright, I'm kind of being an asshole. That's only kind of true. There's really no such thing as a mid-5, so I didn't really know how to make that joke. I-5 is actually very similar to Bruiser Cruiser, only I-5's primary attack actually gets faster if you mash it, which is crazy. Why couldn't they have just done that for Bruiser Cruiser? Though I will say I-5's damage is not nearly as good as Bruiser Cruiser's, unless you use the secondary attack, in which case it becomes on par with it. That's basically all you're going to use the secondary attack for. Like, yeah, it is an actual attack, but I mean, come on, you're just using it to power up the primary attack. Though I will say another stark difference between I-5 and Bruiser Cruiser is that I-5 has a quest that is awful. Not only do you have to go back to the previous chapter in order to do it, it's also just not fun to play. But don't worry though, you get a sick skin out of it. Again, literally. Though it is at least somewhat bearable because his primary attack also acts as a movement option. Still, I think I am going to put him behind Bruiser Cruiser simply because I just like Bruiser Cruiser's secondary attack that much. Hey, don't be too upset at this ranking, I-5. Green isn't your color. Now, Hoodsicle is my goat, alright? The reason why Mastermind is in D is because why would you ever use him when you have Hoodsicle? He's right there. It's actually kind of insane because Mastermind's quest is in the same chapter where you get Hoodsicle, and you'd still probably have an argument to use unevolved Hoodsicle over evolved Mastermind. Not only does Hoodsicle have insane damage, he also has a good movement option in his primary attack. And the secondary attack does ludicrously high damage and has some insane AoE on it. Not to mention the primary attack can also just phase through walls, and you can unlock his villain quest immediately after you beat the chapter since it's just in the overworld. Half my notes for Hoodsicle is just saying he's him. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. He's just him. I'm putting him in straight to S tier. Pain-Yatta got robbed! Because why is he not the Magic Doomlander? I feel like he could have done that job really well. He's kind of the only candidate for it outside of Kaos, especially since they brought him back as a Skylander in Imaginators. Like, some of the other Doom Raiders didn't get in, but he did, which is kind of insane. I also think it's really funny that he's a boss fight in the same chapter as Hoodsicle. Like, talk about tonal whiplash. Pain-Yatta's game plan is actually pretty simple. You basically just use the secondary attack which stuns enemies and launches a Pain-Yatta that can be exploded by the primary attack for some extra damage. You're basically just going to be doing that a lot. It's actually really nice that his movement speed is pretty good, especially since his quest is one of the more annoying ones, I'd say. It isn't like awful or anything, you basically just walk in a straight line. There's no way you can really fail it unless you purposefully decide not to kill any of the enemies for some reason. There's definitely been worse, I'll say that. I would also like to add that his redesign just isn't my favorite. It's not bad or anything, but I just think you hit it perfect with the original that there's just no reason to change it. He's one of the many villains where I wish there was just like a toggle where you could switch back and forth between skins. Probably gonna put him right there. Dreamcatcher. Well, here we are, the worst Doom Raider, and it really isn't close. Unfortunately for Dreamcatcher, she's got a lot going against her. A lot of people really don't like her personality, and, you know, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really mind it that much. Look, I get it, tsunderes can be a little annoying, but hey, you know, they're not that bad. Y'all would not survive Toradora, I'm just saying.
Boom! Boom!
I also just really like her design. I don't really know what she's supposed to be. There's like 4 different things she's inspired by, but I think it's pretty cool. Her biggest problem is that she's just like really hard to use. The primary attack is a hard to aim projectile that doesn't even pierce enemies or other projectiles. The secondary attack takes way too long to activate and doesn't even stay active for long. And hell, it doesn't even work half the time. And the tertiary attack is easily interrupted and not very strong. You'd also think that the vortex would suck in enemies and deal damage over time, but no, you'd be wrong. Her villain quest is free, but for some reason it's 3 chapters later, which is weird because basically every other Doom Raider has had their villain quest in the chapter immediately following the one you get them in. So it's kind of weird that she bucks the trend like this. The skin is also just like really ugly for some reason. I have no idea why they decided to contrast the colors even more with her, but they did. Her boss fight is also just pathetically easy. If you don't count the Gulper, then she definitely has the easiest boss fight out of all the Doom Raiders. And why is she air and not magic? It makes no sense. Her whole thing is like manipulating dreams, right? That seems like a magical ability and not an air one. I'm 100% positive that the reason she's air is because she floats in the air. Like, I'm almost 100% positive on this. That sounds so stupid, but that would be a reason that they'd make her an air element, right? I'm actually gonna put her in D tier because, like, why would you ever use her? Like, Beak mods you, and it's not even close.
Shield Shredder.
For some reason, they decided to give all 4 of the Evilican villains of their own, which is kind of strange, but surprisingly, Shield Shredder is probably the best out of all of them. His damage is actually really good, and especially with the secondary attack. If you're up against a big enemy, the secondary attack just melts them. The primary attack is okay. I kind of wish it was a chargeable multi-hit, though. It's kind of strange that it isn't. It's just like a one-tap dash move, which is really strange. It is a pretty solid movement option despite that. He's actually really similar to Hoodsicle now that I'm thinking about it, which is kind of strange to say. I will say, though, I don't like his redesign. And to be fair, that goes for all the Evilican. Okay, one time, I'll accept them being blue. But why are all 4 of them blue? I think it's because the regular Willikin guy, like the generic male Willikin, wears like a blue shirt, so that's why they're blue. But that's kind of stupid, and why do they do it for all 4 of them? I'll say probably put some somewhere in this range. I think he's definitely better than Chompy Mage. Put him right there. Well, no, actually, I'll put him right there. The more I'm thinking about it, I kind of want to put him even higher. Like, that secondary attack is really strong, especially since you can use it while running away, which is really nice. It's just a little hard to aim is all. I'm going to put him right there.
Krankenstein.
I do think it's funny that Krankenstein is, like, basically just better Jetpack, but that's only because he doesn't have to worry about getting hit like Jetpack does. His primary attack is basically just Jetpack secondary, but again, you don't have to worry about getting hit. The secondary attack is also, like, really fun, but that's only if you can actually grab enemies. The bigger enemies, obviously, you can't grab and throw, but if you can throw enemies, just throwing them off cliffs is just so funny. Say Krankenstein is actually pretty good. Probably put him right there. Now, Rage Mage is actually very similar to Broccoli Guy. I mean, they have, like, basically the same design, if we're being honest, both in terms of looks and in terms of gameplay. His damage is pretty bad unless you have the rock, and the rock takes a long time to summon, but oh my god, is it worth it. I'm just going to call it the Buff Ball. The Buff Ball does crazy damage with Rage Mage, and the primary attack also stuns, which is really good. However, you don't care about what Rage Mage can do by himself. You care about how he can buff Skylanders. The Buff Ball is insane because it gives a 1.4 times damage multiplier. The biggest problem with the multiplier is that it doesn't really last that long, which really sucks. But 1.4 damage is a lot, and I imagine it's way better in multiplayer, since in single player you have to summon the ball, then switch, and then when it runs out you have to switch back. Whereas in multiplayer you can kind of just summon it, and then your multiplayer partner can pick it up immediately. His quest is also, like, really good. It's basically like Dark Light Crypt, where it provides food in previous levels and in future levels, which is actually really nice. I don't think his buff is really that good, however, I think it puts him top of A. If the buff ball just lasted a little longer, I think he'd be S.
Fisticuffs.
Dude, Fisticuffs is super weird. I'm not even really sure what was going on here. I like his music, even though it gets me copyright claimed. However, outside of that, Fisticuffs has a couple major problems holding him back. For one, his skin sucks. I already ranted about it, I just don't like the blue. But another problem is his primary attack is just bad. It does no damage, is really slow, and its only redeeming quality is that it has decent knockback, and even then it doesn't even work half the time. His best feature easily is his secondary attack. It's really strong, and it's just as committal as the primary attack, which is to say a lot, it's really committal. But it has a huge problem where if you jump then the whole move is cancelled. Which is kind of surprising because they fixed that for Bouncer in this game, but then Fisticuffs has it. I don't know how they could have possibly done this, but they did. Not to mention also you have to go to a previous chapter to do his quest, which really sucks. Hey look, he's grabbing his tier placement. I'm probably also going to put him in D, but just know it isn't that bad. No, I think he's like Chill Bill. His secondary attack is similar to Chill Bill. I'd say he's like a little stronger than Chill Bill, simply because you don't have to insta-kill enemies, which is really nice. In fact, yeah, actually we're going to put him up one. Fisticuffs is definitely bad, don't get me wrong, but he isn't awful.
Scrap Shooter.
How did it take us this long to get a second fire villain? We're already like halfway through the game. Once again, why is he blue? I have no idea why he's blue. Stop making them blue. Stop making the Evillican blue. The good thing with Scrap Shooter is that he's a projectile character, which really helps him out because his time gauge is actually pretty low. Basically what you're going to be doing with Scrap Shooter is you're just going to be holding down the secondary attack button as like a turret, and you're just going to hope the enemy doesn't approach you. Probably right around here. Probably right there.
Dr. Crankcase.
Now, Crankcase is actually, like, really fun. I really like him as a villain, and his boss fight is actually really good. Definitely one of the better ones in the game. All of his attacks are pretty good. The primary is really strong, but it's mainly a follow-up to the secondary and tertiary attack once you've closed the distance. The secondary attack is strong, but it doesn't last too long, which really sucks. The tertiary attack is kind of weak and forces you to stand still, and also doesn't even really last that long, but it does shock enemies, which is pretty solid. The quest is also similar to Shrednaught's, where it's built into the level really well. I have no idea why they did this twice, and both times it was with tech villains, but I guess I can't really complain about them doing good level design, because Time Town is already a pretty good level, and Crankcase just adds to it. Hard to believe it took us this long to get an A-rank Doomlander. Like, come on.
Cross Crow.
And another fucking bird that I hate.
Speaking of Time Town, it's kind of crazy that Cross Crow is not only the only villain in Time Town, he's also optional, which is kind of weird, especially for a trap team level. It really sucks that you have to replay the level in order to do his quest, and the quest itself is okay, but at least it's early on in the level, so you don't really have to do too much in Time Town. It's good that Cross Crow is a projectile character, it definitely helps him out a lot, but it really sucks that you have to like hold still in order to fire quickly, which is kind of lame. You're basically just going to be spamming his primary attack with him since his secondary attack just really isn't that good. I also like the gold recolor. I think it looks pretty good on him. Probably put him lower than some of these guys. Probably right around here. Yeah, that seems right.
Blastertron.
I'm from the future,
And I'm from the past.
but that don't mean this friendship wasn't built to last.
Blastertron is just cool. He's got cool skins, he's got cool music, he's got cool voice lines. Blastertron's biggest thing is his big gun. The primary attack is really solid and it stuns enemies. Not to mention it fires off in a huge cone in front of him. His secondary attack is just not that good. As an attack it sucks, and for a movement option it's just okay, but it's all you get and you kind of need it since he's so slow. Pretty similar vein to Cuckoo Clocker. I'd say he's probably just a little bit better. Probably right there.
Wolfgang.
Now the big ol' furry. Wolfgang is pretty solid. The primary attack does some pretty good damage and it's pretty quick. The secondary attack is okay, it's not really good as a movement option, and you don't really need it for him. The tertiary attack is a good projectile, but it sucks that you have to stand still to use it. Unless you glitch the game, in which case, then you can use it while moving. Honestly, Wolfgang is just really fun as a boss fight. The boss fight is insanely fun. It really sucks though that you have to replay the level in order to get to his quest, and the quest is just really tedious. But can we talk about how Wolfgang's design is basically perfect? I mean, even the name Wolfgang is a great music reference. The pants and the eyeliner are a great reference to metal bands, and I love his redesign. It's nothing special, it's basically just a Dark Skylander design, but the Dark Skylanders have really good redesigns, so it's pretty good. I'm gonna probably put him in B tier with all of his other Doom Raider buddies. Probably somewhere right around here.
Grinnade.
Grinnade is not only a member of my chat, but he's also just a little guy. Honestly, he does exactly what you'd think he does. He blows up. He's a grenade.
My main goal is to blow up and then act like I don't know nobody.
He's surprisingly similar to Countdown, where he has like little bomb goons. The goons are pretty solid since they're really spammable and they do good damage. But I mean, come on. Your main goal is to blow up and then act like you don't know nobody, eh? Because that primary attack damage is insane. Also, it really helps that getting hit doesn't knock you out of the animation like a lot of other moves like this do. And it can be jump canceled. Definitely A tier, probably right around here.
Threatpack.
We've had so many water villains, and we saved the best for last. Because honestly, Threatpack probably deserves to be S tier simply for making turret sections less annoying. Honestly, that's all I really need to justify a high placement for him. However, I can't in good conscience put him in S tier for two major reasons. One, his song gets me copyright claimed, which is annoying. And two, he's just not that good as a fighter. Like, yeah, he's strong, his secondary attack knocks back and does good damage, and his primary attack is a pretty strong homing attack that does good damage when fully charged. However, it's just not that much, not to mention getting hit also interrupts your primary charge, which is really annoying. Honestly, just for making turret sections better, he's probably gonna go, like, right here.
Tae Kwon Crow.
Dude, I have no idea who's in charge of, like, balancing the villains, but oh my god, did they not do it for Hawkmungus, the GOAT, the greatest Hawkmungus. Just insanely strong primary attack. It's strong, it's fast, it just kind of has a jank hitbox, which is really weird. Not to mention that Tae Kwon Crow also just has a projectile. It's an okay projectile, but a projectile is a projectile. But it's good at dealing with small fry and dealing with hordes of enemies. Also, I have no idea why his music is so oriental. Like, yeah, I know he's like a ninja samurai guy, but it's just a little strange. However, I really do want to put him in D tier simply for that quest alone. Oh my god, it might just be the worst in the game. You're just going to be running around in circles, spamming the secondary attack, and man, is it just not fun. And it lasts like 5 minutes too. It's not even really that much time, but man, is it the longest 5 minutes of your life. Still, I don't think in good conscience I can put him anything lower than S, because oh my god, that primary attack is just so strong.
Bone Chompy.
I have no idea why they made the Chompy so good in this game. Like, why is Bone Chompy's primary attack damage so high? He's actually, like, really similar to Chomp Chest now that I think about it. Like, they basically do the same thing, except Bone Chompy is just a little stronger. Not to mention his secondary attack is, like, actually usable. It stuns and is actually a pretty solid trap move. Great at running away from enemies. I also really do like his redesign. I like the blue stripes. It actually kind of fits him a lot. It's like tribal paint. Kind of sucks that you have to replay a different level, but hey, the quest is, like, right at the beginning, so it doesn't really matter that much. Probably gonna put him, like, right up here, honestly.
Grave Clobber.
Grave Clobber is a melee villain that has a low time gauge, which really sucks. His primary attack is like crazy powerful, but it's only on the second hit. The first hit isn't that strong, and it takes a while for the second hit to come out. The secondary attack is actually like a pretty solid projectile. It does good damage and it homes in on enemies, which is really nice, but he's really slow, which kind of sucks, and you can't even like eye roll into faster speeds, you know? Not to mention his skin is like really strange. I don't know what they were going for with him. It's like probably in this area, a bunch of other melee dudes. Probably right there, yeah.
Bad Juju.
Bad Juju is probably the most brainless character in this whole game. I don't even think I really need to explain. All you have to do with Bad Juju is just jump and primary attack. The primary attack hits basically globally and does pretty good damage. You don't even really need the secondary attack. It's okay. It forces you to stand still when you're actually starting up the move, which is kind of unfortunate, but I mean, honestly, his biggest flaw is that you just don't need it. The primary attack is just better. Genuinely thinking it might put her into S tier simply because of how insane the primary attack is. Like, what?
Golden Queen.
Golden Queen, you know, if this is a tier list based on how many teeth the villains have, a Golden Queen wins. Like, why does she have so many teeth, bro? What is going on? Am I the only one who thinks it's weird that Golden Queen's skin is, like, explicitly not gold? It's clearly silver. Or platinum, I guess. It could be platinum. Like, I get that her, like, actual skin is gold, but her clothes are just a different color. But she's called the Golden Queen. She should be always dripped out in gold. Why does she have less gold when she evolves? That don't make no sense. If you don't have Chaos, or if you just can't do the Chomp Chest exploit, then I'd say that she's probably the second best way to get gold in this game, behind another villain that we have yet to talk about. I'd say that she's only a little bit better than Chomp Chest, but only because she's less tedious than Chomp Chest. However, her most obvious flaw is that she is not a fighter. Her damage is low, and so is her time gauge. Her best attack is easily her tertiary attack, and everything else is just kind of underwhelming. And it also sucks because you can only have one tertiary attack out at a time. Her quest is yet another interactive one. It's kind of similar to Shrednaught's, but instead of loading zones, it's just like chests you can open. So to summarize, she's not the best looking villain, she doesn't have the best damage, she doesn't have the best time gauge, and she doesn't even have the best gold gain. So that kind of has to put her somewhere low. I'm gonna put her probably in B tier. I think her gold gain does savor her, and so does her boss fight. I think not only is her boss fight the best in the game, but it's also arguably the best in the series. I don't know, don't hold me to that. I haven't played the last two games yet, but it's definitely my favorite fight in this game.
Smokescream.
Man, Smokescream is such a hard name for a villain that is just kind of underwhelming. You know, when I made that Spyro's Adventure tier list, I was kind of curious to why everyone said that Sunburn was bad, but after playing Smokescream, I kind of understand why, because he plays exactly the way Sunburn does on X-Spec. Which is, of course, to say that his hitbox for his flamethrower is only active once every 10 millennia. Look, the attack is strong, don't get me wrong, but could you have not made it at least like a continuous hitbox? Come on! His secondary attack is an okay move. It stuns enemies, but it has the same pitfalls as all other stun moves, where it doesn't work on any of the enemies you'd want it to, and it's also hard to hit, and it does no damage. So, that kinda sucks. It's also really annoying that his quest is like literally right behind where you actually get him, but you can't backtrack to it, so you're forced to replay the level. Like, okay, gee, thanks guys. You were nice enough to do it for Slobber Trap, but not for Smokescream. The good news is the flamethrower does a lot of damage, but I'd say he's probably still bottom of B.
Chaos.
Behold Behold my ultimate evil flawless victory! Optimum of Doom!
Okay, here we are. Easily the best villain in the game, and it's not even close. Kaos is just broken. He's so strong. He has insane damage. He can last literally forever with the magic Doom Circle. I mean, hell, all the other Doom Circles are pretty good, but I mean, do you even need them? You can just spam Sharks and then magic Doom Circle whenever you're about to run out of time. His quest is also just free. It's just in the overworld immediately after you beat the game. And the skin is also really cool. I also think it's really cool that they brought back his evil giant head or whatever from the first game. But yeah, no, Kaos is crazy. I mean, even if he didn't have the magic Doom Circle, all the other ones are just crazy strong. Not to mention you can get easily 50,000 gold with Kaos by just doing the Chomp Chest exploit. Not only is Kaos the best at combat, he's also the best at grinding gold for Skylanders. Like, what? I guess he's just really trying his best to be reformed. I'm gonna be honest, Kaos is so much better that I think Kaos deserves his own tier. Like, he is genuinely that good. I think he is so much better than everyone else on this tier list. It's not even close.
Nightshade.
I will give it to Nightshade. I was definitely sleeping on him, because, wow, he is kind of strong. I said that Golden Queen is the second best at gold gain. That's true for base game, but if you have any of the adventure packs, then Nightshade is definitely better than Golden Queen, because the primary attack is pretty solid. But it's not the primary attack alone that's pretty good. You see, Nightshade is actually the spy from TF2, because he can go Duran Duran, turn invisible, and then backstab the enemies. The tertiary attack is just cracked. It turns you Enigma invisible, which means enemies don't see you and don't move. Taking damage doesn't knock you out of the invisibility, which is nice. Oh, and also attacking also guarantees crits. That's crazy! Not to mention he also has a backstab mechanic that triples your damage and gold gain from primary. Like, what? That's crazy! Genuine S tier. Like, he's pretty good.
Luminous.
Dude, what is with these DLC Doom Raiders? They are insane! Luminous, I'd say, has two big problems that hold him back. One is his time gauge. It's kind of on the lower end. And two, his primary attack is kind of hard to use. But where the primary attack is kind of weak, the tertiary and secondary attack are crazy. They do ludicrous damage, and that's basically all you're gonna need. Not to mention that they have good AoE on them, which is surprising. Though I will say a negative about him is that he's not implemented into the level too well. And by that I mean they just make it way too obvious that Mags is a little sussy imposter. I don't know, I guess these games have never really been known for subtlety. They are made for little babies after all. Ooh, this is another hard one. Is he A or S? He's really strong. That secondary attack is insane. Ooh. Put him like right here.
Trolling Thunder.
Dude, why is Trolling Thunder like deadass good? Like, you'd think a literal tank probably wouldn't be that good. I mean, think about it. You are a giant target, you're really slow, but I mean, he's good. Honestly, the most surprising thing about him is that they gave him actual tank controls. Like, they didn't have to do that, but they did. I actually kind of like it. He just has great damage and area control. By the way, I have no idea how Trolling Thunder can jump, but he can, for some reason. His secondary attack knocks back both the player and enemies, and the primary attack is just really strong overall. Like, unironically, pretty good.
Lob Goblin.
Lob Goblin is pretty uninteresting, if I have to be honest. Also kind of weird that his, like, magnet isn't here. I was always wondering what was so off about him, but now I figured it out. Like, he's supposed to have a big magnet on his forehead. Very strange. The secondary attack is bad, and I have no idea how to use it. Like, I thought it was kind of like Voodoo's tripwire hooks, but I don't think it is. The primary attack, though, is actually pretty solid. Still, that doesn't really mean too much, so I'm probably going to put him, like, right around here.
Chompy.
So Chompy's actually really funny, because, like, why is his damage so high? And also, why is he better at summoning Chompies than Chompy Mage is? Like, what? I alluded to this earlier, but, like, seriously, his Chompy summon is just better. It summons more of them, and they do more damage. Like, what? Also, I think the tiger skin is really cool, and his music is also just really nice. Definitely better than his dead brother. Probably, like, right... Oh my god, is he, like, right here?
Mab Lobs.
Last, and honestly probably least, Mab Lobs. He's literally just Lob Goblin, but worse numerically. I have no idea what they were thinking with this. Not only did they put two of, like, basically the same villain, like, right next to each other, they put them in the DLC levels. Like, what? Why would you do that? Kind of like the exact opposite of pay to win. Probably actually going to put him in like D tier. He isn't like awful or anything, but you just have to work like way too hard. You really need to combo the secondary attack with the primary to do any type of damage. Alright, well that's the list. I'm going to review the footage, and future me is probably going to make fun of me for how wrong I was.
The future, that's all mine. Time to make this a one-way trip. Ta-ta!
I have to go now. My planet needs me.
Hey, future Dynasty here. Guess what? I was right. I knew I'd have to make revisions. And I got a new mic. Now ain't that nice? Of course, I looked through all the footage and decided to make some changes myself, but I also did something that I haven't done for these videos before. I asked my Discord server. So what I did is I sent this tier list to my Discord and asked, hey, do you guys got any suggestions? Am I wrong about anything? And thank God that I did, because there were some things that they knew that I didn't, so they were very helpful for this. For the first change I want to make is just a minor one. I think Tae Kwon Crow is probably the best villain in the game that isn't Kaos. He just does a lot of damage. And I will say that Hoodsickle is really good. And funnily enough, my Discord server was trying to gaslight me into saying that Hoodsickle wasn't that good, and I'm like, no? Like, yeah, the secondary attack is a little slow, but it's still pretty strong. Hoodsickle's also like one of 4 villains that has a movement option, which is kind of insane. Speaking of movement options, Chef Pepperjack. Like I said, someone in the Discord pointed out that Chef Pepperjack is only like one of 5 villains that actually has a movement option. So yeah, we're actually gonna move him up into A tier. He's probably still like bottom of A tier since his damage is on the lower side. But yeah, I think he definitely deserves A tier just for that. Similarly, Wolfgang needs to go like way up. I actually think I meant to put him into A tier, but I just like didn't. Like, I think he's probably he's right around here. I think yeah, probably right there. I'm also going to move Cuckoo Clocker above Grinnade since you just get him earlier and he does more damage. Next up, I want to talk about Golden Queen. Now, somebody in my Discord pointed out that you can summon her turret, and then if you switch to your Skylander, it'll still stick around and do damage, which is really nice utility. But what I also found out is that it's boosted by elemental power, which is really nice. Golden Queen's best move is easily her turret, so yeah, I think this definitely warrants her moving up. Probably to like bottom of A tier. Because she can also freeze enemies with her secondary attacks, so she's actually not as bad as I initially thought. We also got to move Smokescream down. Like I said, playing him really feels like playing Sunburn on X-Spec, and his secondary attack does like literally nothing to half the enemies in this game. And to be fair, that kind of applies to Cuckoo Clocker as well, but Cuckoo Clocker actually does damage, so probably going to move him probably top of C. Similar thing with Pain-Yatta, but his damage is at least a little bit better. I was kind of thinking about moving him up or down, but I actually think he's fine where he is. I do kind of want to move Chompy Mage up just a little here. Probably not better than Grave Clobber, but I forgot how strong the primary attack was. That's still pretty strong. We're also going to move Lob Goblin up just a little here. He's not going to move very far. His secondary attack does stay out even when you switch, and his primary attack is a little stronger than I gave it credit for, especially since all 3 bombs are basically guaranteed to hit. I'm also going to move I-5 up. Probably to B tier, honestly. He's another villain that kind of has a movement option. I'm counting the primary attack since it does speed you up even after a little bit, so it's actually not that bad. It is also stronger than Bruiser Cruisers. You just actually, have to power it up. I'm also going to move Shrednaught up just a little bit. Probably like, probably right there. His secondary attack is like dead ass better than like most of the shit in here. And we're probably going to move Bruiser Cruiser down, probably to the bottom of C. I don't think he's D tier simply because that secondary attack is strong enough. It's just like basically his only game plan. Chill Bill, I'm actually going to move above the Gulper. I kind of underrated Chill Bill just a little bit since I basically only focused on his killing power when I didn't realize he's basically just pure utility since his secondary attack slows enemies and his primary attack just stops them. Since you don't have to sit there for like 10 seconds to kill an enemy, he's not as bad as I thought. He's still not great or anything, especially since the freeze, like I said, doesn't work on like half the enemies in the game, but he's not bad. I also think I wasn't mean enough to Mab Lobs. I think he's... is he worse than Slobber Trap? Because Slobber Trap basically has a useless secondary attack. I kind of want to be mean. Especially since he's DLC. I guess you can get him early enough. Like, you can basically get him at the same time as Slobber Trap if you really want to. I'm going to say he's slightly better. I'm going to be honest. I'm also just going to move... Well... Nah, yeah, we're going to keep Mastermind right there. Fisticuffs, I'm also going to say I was probably a little too mean to... He's still not great or anything, but I just didn't realize how strong the secondary attack was. I just think if it wasn't able to be jump canceled, that would be just so much better. I also think I rated Trolling Thunder a little too highly. He's probably somewhere around here. I also think I overrated Blastertron a little too well. He's definitely good, but I thought the primary attack stunned while it was charging and not after it was fired. So I'm going to say he's actually probably a little... down here, honestly. Yeah, probably like right there. He is one of the very few villains with a movement option, even if it is bad. I also completely forgot to mention that Grennade's quest gives money, but there's literally so many ways to get money in Trap Team that it literally wasn't worth mentioning. Somebody in the Discord also argued that Luminous should be S tier because during the Chaos boss fight, you can summon his tertiary attack off the edge of the arena, and it'll do continuous damage to Chaos. Now, when I first tried this out, I was kind of unimpressed. I didn't really think the damage was that good. Even with the elemental zone boost, it's still not great. But then he made a good point that it's continuous damage and you can just focus on dodging, which is easily the hardest part about the final fight. The only problem is that the tertiary attack doesn't stay around when you switch, so you have to stay as Luminous when you're dodging. So I think I will elevate him to S tier, probably still bottom of S tier. But yeah, I'd say that's some pretty good tech he has. Man, every time I think I'm too mean to Dreamcatcher, I just see that one fucking clip of the tornado getting canceled out by the Cross Crow's bullet. I'm just like, yeah, you know, I think she belongs down here. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put Sheep Creeper 1. I'm gonna put Sheep Creeper 1 above. There, now the Willikins are right next to each other. Actually, I'm gonna do that. I think I'm also going to move Bone Chompy down below Chomp Chest. They're pretty similar. They're both really funny because their primary attack is a movement option. I'm just moving Bone Chompy down lower than Chomp Chest because you get Bone Chompy later. I'm going to keep regular Chompy right where he is because his damage is the highest out of all three of them. Not to mention that you can get him right after Chapter 2, so his availability is pretty good. Alright, well, I think this is the final list. Definitely doesn't look like a bell curve, but hey, still a pretty good list. Remember, if you enjoyed the video, hit like and subscribe and all that junk. Still got one more Trap Team video I gotta make, so I'll hopefully be getting on that. But in the meantime, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.